Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hi everyone, DJ here from the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. Do you want to see something totally broken out of Commander 2019? It's Karek, Son of Yawgmoth. Karek, Son of Yawgmoth is 4 black, but not normal black mana, it's Phyrexian black mana. It's a legendary creature horror minion, and he's a 2/2. He's got lifelink, and for each black in a cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. Whenever you cast a black spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Karek, Son of Yawgmoth. Oh my gosh, this is a perfect black commander because it really uses your life as a resource to give you free mana. Karek costs 4 generic mana to cast and 6 life. But that doesn't matter, you have life to spare. And then every other black mana cost, you can just pay 2 life. This means that you have so much more access to mana and doing incredibly broken things because your cheating costs. Oh, so good. This means we might want to prioritize black mana pips in our spells and activated costs because we want the ability to pay 2 life even though we might end up spending black mana to activate these abilities and cast these spells. I love that it's not just casting costs, it's anything that's black. I think it's so great. We're only really limited by how much life we have, and we start off with 40 life. That's pretty good. Life is a resource, and so spending a couple life to move ahead on mana is a trade we should be very willing to make. And that means anything that can gain us life can essentially gain us mana with this commander. Karek has lifelink, which is great because we can recuperate some of the life that we will inevitably lose when we pay life for mana costs. Karek also has the ability to get much bigger, getting a +1/+1 counter every time you play a black spell. It really puts a lightning rod on this commander because of the power of cheating mana costs. And of course, whenever we get access to free mana, basically free, we have to think of all the combo potentials. But the first thing I want to talk about is why this is so good and essentially how to build this deck to make it better. Wait a second, am I actually going to explain why free mana is good? Well, the thing is that you can't just put Karek in any old deck and have it be properly supported. Magic is a game of resource management. And 2 key resources are our mana and our cards. If we're able to deploy our cards faster than our opponents, having a bigger impact on the board, even if it costs us a bunch of life, then that will give us a huge advantage over our opponents. So we always have to pay attention to the constraints of this deck, which is cards and life. Now that doesn't just mean we ignore mana. In fact, we might be building a very explosive deck. This is not a deck that gains incremental advantage turn after turn after turn. It doesn't grind your opponents out. It plays the commander and then has a huge amount of life loss in order to impact the board and make huge differences in the game. And so there could be some black cards that support that general strategy. Bubbling Muck and Dark Ritual both give us influxes of mana. These could actually contribute to putting more impactful creatures or things on the board to take over a game. And that's how this deck is going to get powerful, with large influxes of mana and big impactful plays on the board, facilitated by your commander and at the cost of tons of life. So let's talk about the card draw that we can have in this deck. Well, everyone's talking about Vilis, Broker of Blood, because it's just a good card on its own. It's a demon out of M20, 8 mana for an 8/8 flyer. You can pay a black and pay 2 life to give target creature -1/-1 until end of turn, but the real key is whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. Vilis is just good on its own. It's a house of a card. It's amazing. But combined with this commander, and suddenly you have sort of a build your own Gristlebrand. I know, that's a lot of mana to build a Gristlebrand, but it's still very powerful, especially in conjunction. But you don't just need Villas to be able to draw cards. You can draw cards in a ton of different ways in this deck. You can use one-off spells like Sign in Blood, Ransack the Lab, Read the Bones. Sign in Blood could be free, only paying 6 life to draw 2 cards. Oh my gosh. You know, if we're really going to be trading in life for cards, how about Infernal Contract? You pay 6 life, pay half your life, round it up, and then draw 4 cards. Okay, so maybe there's other ways to have huge card draw in this deck. Maybe you play Necropotence. You could theoretically pay this for 6 life, and then pay more life to draw cards, putting them in your hand. That could be pretty good too. Or you could go with Dad. Dad always helps out when you're in trouble. If you need cards, Yawgmoth himself can help you draw cards. You need to have a creature-based deck in order for Yawgmoth Thran Physician to really function. But one thing that's clear is that we need plenty of card draw in this deck to be able to move us forward, to be able to get that card advantage. Because if we play our commander and we just, I don't know, throw a Phyrexian Arena on the battlefield, it's not bad, but are we really leveraging the mana advantage that the commander is giving us? I don't know. Let's go on to life gain. The first card is a slam dunk inclusion, and that's Bontu's Monument. 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Black creature spells cost 1 less to cast. Reducing the generic casting cost of spells is going to be very good because our commander essentially reduces the colored mana costs. So Jet Medallion is a clear inclusion in this deck. I also like Bontu's Monument because it has this incidental life gain. We could just be deploying our creatures and gain a little bit of life here and there. It also has some combo potential. Speaking of combo potential, let's talk about Aetherflux Reservoir. A 4-mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain a life for each spell you've cast this turn. So this again could recuperate a lot of the life lost if we're dumping our hand onto the battlefield with our commander. But also this is known for being pretty broken. If you can chain a lot of spells together, you can gain a ton of life and you can nuke someone, paying 50 life and dealing 50 damage. By the way, there's a whole section in this deck devoted to lifelink, so it's totally normal that you gain a bunch of life, swing in with your commander with lifelink, and then Aetherflux Reservoir another opponent. It can just happen. Let's go with more support with lifelink. Dread Presence is a brand new card out of M20, and you can gain just a little bit of life with every swamp that enters the battlefield, but also gives you card draw. Those are 2 things that you desperately need in this deck. Exquisite Blood is very good. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. It might draw you some hate because Sanguine Bond is a card that goes infinite with Exquisite Blood, but this is just very strong in this deck. Exsanguinate is also an easy way to gain life. Now, with your commander, it can reduce the black mana cost of Exsanguinate, but you can't pay life to go into that X cost of Exsanguinate. But that doesn't matter. Hopefully you have enough mana to sink into this, and you'll gain a ton of life, and then you can move forward by paying more life for more cards. But the best way to gain life is through the Extort mechanic. Pontiff of Blight is 4 black for a 2/7 zombie cleric, and it has Extort, and it gives all your other creatures Extort. Okay, that means that whenever you cast a spell, you can pay a white or a black, in this deck, a black. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. In a multiplayer game, you could be draining each opponent for 1, gaining 3 yourself. Now, if you're paying 2 life to activate this ability, which your commander lets you do, you'll be paying 2 life to drain everyone for 1, and in the end, netting 1 life. That's very good, especially if Extort is magnified over all of your creatures. It just takes a couple spells to just win the game, drain everyone out. It's very, very good. One other important note is that many of you see the white-black, the little Orzhov thing in the reminder text of this card, and you say, aha, that's white right there, which means it cannot go in a mono-black commander deck. That is not true. And the reason why is because this white-black little Orzhov thing is in the reminder text. See, after Extort, it's in parentheses, which means that it is not actually a part of the Pontiff of Blight's color identity or in the Cryptghast's color identity. It's just reminding you how Extort works. So to reiterate, legal in mono-black commander decks. Moving on to Cryptghast, Extort is powerful. We're going to want it in this deck, but also we will want to support this deck with mana. Lots of mana. We can also gain life by doing silly things like Vampiric Link. It's a single black aura that enchants a creature, and whenever enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. One important thing is because it says whenever, that means that this is a triggered ability, and a triggered ability is different than lifelink. So if you put this on commander, you will gain lifelink damage, and you will also gain vampiric link damage because it gives it this triggered ability. I really like doubling up the lifelink, especially if we have something like Whip of Erebos. Oh man, Whip of Erebos is so good in this deck. It can come down early, costing 2 black. It has a really relevant ability, giving everything lifelink, and also the activated ability could be really strong in a creature-based deck. I also really like this with cards like Pestilence Demon, because if Pestilence Demon has lifelink, then we can start sinking mana into Pestilence Demon and doing a ton of damage to the table. Also, Pestilence could be something I include in this deck. You can even use Carrick's ability to activate it, taking 3 damage for every 1 you deal to the table, but it could end up being relevant. If you're interested in Vampire Tribal, or I guess Shaman Tribal too, there's some powerful Vampire Shaman that can help you gain life. Calestria Highborn costs black, easy to cast with your commander, and whenever it or another vampire you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you can pay black. Again, easy to pay for with our commander. If you do, target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Sangromancer gains you 3 life whenever a creature your opponent controls dies or whenever they discard a card. There's lots of life gain in black. This is just an example of how you can go down a very specific path to try and get your life gain and let your aggro in. And let's not forget, Carrick can get very big and has lifelink on his own. We can even sacrifice him to Mirren the Moaning Well and gain tons and tons of life. Okay, but Carrick himself represents another category, and that is the aggressive category. We essentially want to be putting tons of things on the battlefield. We want to end this game quickly, and one way to do that is with powerful attacking creatures. Dreadshade is easy to cast with your commander, black for a 3/3, and you can pay black to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. Now, a lot of people are excited about this because they can see the damage potential of pumping a bunch of life into Dreadshade and smacking someone. It feels really cool. But I have to take a step back and remind you that Molten Steel Dragon exists, and it's not really played a lot. I don't know if you've seen this at your commander tables. Maybe it's tech. It's very inexpensive. Maybe you want to throw this in a dragon deck or in some sort of artifact deck. But what I'm trying to say is that Molten Steel Dragon is not this powerhouse card. And that's what we've done. We've kind of built a Molten Steel Dragon with a commander and a completely different card. And so maybe Shade specifically, or this type of aggression, isn't as strong as we might think. We can again go back to vampires if we're excited about aggressive black creatures. Gifted Aetherborn can be cast for just 2 black mana, and it has lifelink. We like lifelink. Drana, Liberator of Malakir, gets huge. Bloodthirsty Aerialist can get huge, especially because we are valuing lifelink. Twilight Prophet also gains us life, and card draw is pretty great. Vampire Nocturnist has 3 black pips in it. This can just cost 1 mana and 6 life. But it could pump our entire team, and I already mentioned the Calestria Highborn. So we could take this in a vampire aggro direction. Now, I don't know how this compares against more traditional Mardu vampire decks, because Edgar Markov is very good, but this could be a little bit of uniqueness, a little bit of spice in your playgroup. Just playing vampires is pretty limiting. Instead, play with the biggest creatures you can. Helldozer could just cost 3 generic mana and 6 life. And then destroy target land. If it's non-basic, you can untap Helldozer for 6 life. Cavalier of Night could just cost 2. Dread could just cost 3. All of these could be incredibly powerful cards, just really impacting the board. And sure, you could be paying a bunch of life, but maybe you'll recuperate it all. Especially if you are this devoted, you can play Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Oh my gosh, just imagine if you dump a Gray Merchant with some of these other cards on the battlefield, you could be gaining 20, 30, 40 life. And Kirik, son of Yawgmoth himself, has 3 black pips. These Phyrexian mana do count as black mana for Gray Merchant's purposes, but also it could facilitate a more aggressive strategy. You'll want Lightning Greaves anyways, because Kirik is a very powerful card that should be killed immediately. Okay, that could make Kirik attack better in the late game. Maybe we have a Rogue's Passage in this deck. Super easy to include in a mono black deck and could get Kirik in for tons of damage, or get your Dread in for a bunch of damage. Coincidentally, Lightning Greaves and Rogue's Passage are a non-bow with each other, but that's okay. Also imagine Phage the Untouchable. Oh my gosh, just imagine Phage the Untouchable. What's normally 7 mana and something awful to cast could just cost 3 CMC. 3! Grieve it up, passage it up, whatever, end the game with Phage. I think this is the direction that I would go if I was building an aggressive deck. I would want crazy big creatures that I could just put onto the board out of nowhere and do tons and tons of damage, maybe even win the game. Alright, let's talk about a few combos. As soon as we get free mana, we just think, okay, how can we abuse this? And usually we can abuse it by instantly winning the game. Doomsday can be cast for 6 mana and half your life, but Doomsday is essentially an I win the game card because it can build you a perfect stack and essentially draw you into the win. A lot of people are using Mikaeus the Unhallowed for this combo. If you also have free mana, then you can consider building a Storm deck. Yawgmoth's Will, very on flavor, is really powerful. Demonic Tutor, Tendrils of Agony, all the free mana, card draw can just put something together and kill your opponents. This goes really well with that Aetherflux Reservoir as well. You can also put together a combo like Gravecrawler. We used to use Phyrexian Altar to end a zombie on the battlefield to be able to cast Gravecrawler over and over and over again. And then we do stuff like have a Bantu's Monument, an Aetherflux Reservoir, Zulaport Cutthroat, a Vengeful Dead, any of these things on the battlefield to be able to drain your opponents out. Notice many of these cards are cards we would include in this deck anyways, and we can substitute the Phyrexian Altar for our commander. And so this becomes a really powerful engine that we can include in our deck for not very much. You can also find combos in tons of other colors if you want to include Yawgmoth's boy, forget his name, Rick, Yawgmoth's boy. If you want to include him in other decks, then cards like Training Grounds can reduce the activated abilities of other cards, and something like Scholar of Athreos. Together, this acts kind of like Extort, paying 2 life to activate Scholar of Athreos and hopefully gain 3 life back again and draining each opponent for 1. But I think a card I'm very interested in including in this deck is Shadowborn Apostle. Just imagine paying 2 life for Shadowborn Apostles. Oh my gosh, the potential is amazing. And you can pay 2 life to sacrifice them. A lot of times mana is the constraining factor of a Shadowborn Apostle deck, but just imagine if it was only your life. Aetherflux Reservoir goes really well in this deck. You could secret salvage all of the Shadowborn Apostles back again, doing crazy shenanigans. But ultimately, the thing we need to leave with is that Kirik is good. He's really, really good. And there's a lot of different ways to build this deck, and that's something that you have to be aware of. There are so many ways to build this deck that if you go on EDH Rec, where it basically compiles different deck lists, you will see a Storm deck, which is completely different than an aggro-based deck, which is completely different than a Doomsday deck. And so you have to be really careful about how you build this deck because it's so open. Because literally it deals with mana. That's at the core of this game, and it cheats at mana. It's so good. I think it's totally broken. In fact, it's so broken, I need you to tell me the other ways to break this card, because I know that you can give me plenty in the comments down below. I built a spicy version for this deck, and so if you're interested in what I did, click on the link in the description, and that'll take you over to tcgplayer.com. If you use my affiliate link, it helps me out a lot, and do you know who else helps me out a lot? My patrons. They're my bros. and they make sure that more videos are able to come out every single week. And thank you too for watching. I'm super excited about Commander 2019. So excited that I just gotta keep making videos. Subscribe to get the latest updates on all of the new Commander products. All right, everyone, I'll see you really soon.